Hello and welcome back. I wasn't planning on putting out a video today, but I'm in the middle of doing paperwork and tax, so my procrastination levels are through the roof at the moment. I got a little bit inspired by a message someone sent me on Twitter. Remember, you can get in touch via Gosforth Andy on Twitter, and Graham sent me a note asking about whether it's a good time to set up a handyman business and how much do you charge? This is a question that comes up a lot. Is it a good time to set up a handyman business or a trades business in any way, shape or form? And how much should you charge? I'm also going to cover off a few key areas I think if I was setting up a new trades business now, I probably wouldn't set up a handyman business. I would try and specialise in an area that you particularly want to do, unless you really want to do handyman work, which is covering a very broad range of stuff. But you'll probably find that if you specialise, ultimately you'll probably be able to charge more. I'll cover off the specialisation side of things in part 2 of this video. Should be out on Saturday with any luck. For now, today, we're just going to talk about money. I'm going to kind of cover stuff from a UK perspective, but a lot of what I'm going to be saying would apply probably more or less wherever you are in the world, but obviously rates and wages and everything, I can't comment on that for different parts of the planet. Please don't take anything that I'm telling you as being factually correct in any way whatsoever. This is just my humble opinion on where things are at the minute. Is it a good time to set up a handyman business in 2019? My quick answer to that is yes, absolutely. If it's something you want to do, go for it. It's a great time for setting up in business at the moment. Now, obviously, we've got Brexit coming and we don't know how that's going to affect things, but we'll just kind of ignore that and get on with life because there's loads of work out there at the moment if you're happy to do the graft. So, as you may or may not be aware, I originally set up a handyman business and now that's kind of transitioned over the last few years purely into a joinery business. It was kind of always a direction I was wanting to go in, although I was always torn a little bit with electrics because my dad was an electrician and I'd grown up with electrics and helping him on jobs. But I also love working with wood, and that's how I ended up turning things more towards the joinery business. If you want to know more about the background of that, listen to I think probably episode 1 of the Measuring Up podcast. So I'll include a link in the description to the podcast and to my podcast co-host's channel, Peter Millard. So there's links in the description. So I'm going to cover off later in this video what I would suggest is a decent starting hourly rate if you're going to be doing handyman type work. I will guarantee there will be a small minority of people out there who are just thinking, Andy, for goodness sake, just get to the point. So here's the deal. I'm going to give you information in this video that I would have loved to have had when I first set up in business. In this video and in part 2. It's taken me 2 or 3 days to put this video together, to work out what I'm going to say, because I always forget what I need to tell people, and to film it all and to edit it all. 2 or 3 days of my time it's taken. So if you think that using 15 minutes of your time to watch this video is a waste of your time, then I genuinely think you shouldn't be setting up in business. For everyone else though, there's one other really important tip that I'm going to tell you at the end of this video that so many tradespeople don't take into account. For now though, let's have a chat about how much to charge. And it's not as straightforward as just saying, just charge X amount, because it's going to depend on where you are, what sort of work you're doing, what your overheads are going to be, and all sorts of other things. Handyman work is great, and there's loads of work out there for that sort of work because customers love having a single point of contact for all of their smaller jobs. So if they can just have one, because most, for example, most electricians are happy doing bigger jobs and aren't that interested in coming out and changing a light bulb. If you are an electrician happier doing the smaller jobs, I would suggest you specialise in that, because there's loads of work out there just doing the smaller stuff. And I think a lot of customers don't realise that you can phone an electrician up to get them to change a light bulb, for example. But in my experience, most electricians I know aren't that bothered about doing that sort of thing. They're more into doing like full consumer unit refreshes and rewires, because the problem is with the smaller jobs, and this is why you need to be charging a decent hourly rate, and you can't view it as what you would be receiving in corporate land as an hourly rate. So for example, in corporate land, if you earn 20 grand a year, that equates to an hourly rate of about £10 an hour or thereabouts. But if you go out there and charge £10 an hour for smaller jobs, your business will fail very, very quickly. You're not going to be booked up 8 hours a day. Not in a million years. It just doesn't work like that. You'll get 20 customers who all want the job done at 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and then everyone else can't manage any other time through the week, you know. So you'll end up with these kind of peaks and troughs. It just, unless you were running a bigger business where you've got maybe an admin person to book the jobs in, and then you've got a team of maybe 5 or 10 varied, skilled technicians, let's say, charging at £10-20 an hour, it's not going to work. Just trust me on that. You're going to be on the lowest rung of the ladder. And the other problem is that you're going to develop a reputation of being the cheapest. And I do not recommend going down that route, because that means forever and a day, you will always be known as the cheapest person. You will always have that reputation of like, oh, I know Joe Bloggs who does a bit of like odd job type work. They're dead cheap. That'll be the thing that people say about you. They'll not say, oh, they're really good, or they're really efficient and they're really punctual. The thing you will be known for is being cheap. That means as soon as you put your prices up, your USP has gone out the window. So there's no reason to use you anymore, because the one thing that everyone used you for is gone. Don't go in there trying to undercut everyone. Don't go in there trying to undercut the trades. If anything, a decent handyman should be charging more than your regular trades, because you're probably going to have a wider range of tools, probably a wider skill set, and above all, you don't want to be developing a bad reputation with other tradespeople in your area that you're potentially going to borderline compete with on the smaller jobs, because if you play your cards right, they're going to pass a huge amount of work to you that they don't want to do. And if you go out there taking all of their best jobs and massively undercutting them, you're not going to be very popular. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning as well is differentiate yourself between being either a handyman or an odd job man, because I think that is two different things. A handyman I view as being quite a skilled job. You will be asked to do all sorts of things, from re-siliconing baths and showers through to maybe replacing tap washers, maybe even replacing taps. You might be asked to do smaller electrical jobs, maybe fitting new light fittings and stuff like that. I know of several handyman property maintenance type businesses who have now evolved into full building companies, and they're now doing very well. But don't do anything that's outside your comfort bubble that you don't understand, and make sure you've got insurance. Do differentiate yourself from like the odd job type work. And I'm not dissing odd job men in any way, shape or form, but you will have people asking you just to do garden clearances, taking away bags of rubbish, taking away waste, man with a van type stuff. That is a different job to being a handyman, in my view. I think you've got odd job man, you've got handyman. You're going to be expected to do a lot of different jobs, and if you're charging a reasonable rate, you're going to have to do those jobs well. That's the one disadvantage of charging a higher rate, is that if you charge a higher rate and you do a rubbish job, you best be prepared to go out there and fix it for free, because otherwise you're going to get a really bad reputation very quickly. But as long as you're doing a good job, you can charge whatever you like. And especially if you can specialise in certain areas, and that's another key thing, I think. So you need to understand the market and why there's a demand for this kind of work. There's a massive shortage of houses in the UK at the moment. Everywhere on this map that isn't a dark blue colour is basically an area where demand is outstripping supply. The lighter the colour, the more of a shortage of new build houses there is, or not necessarily even new build, but the more of a shortage of houses there is. You've got to understand that the UK, like a lot of countries in the world, but population's growing. The UK has almost 10 million extra people in it compared to around the year 2000. UK is a bigger place now. There's more work out there, there's more houses, there's more people. And the other big thing as well is that life expectancy is going up and up as well. Life expectancy in the UK is about 81 years now. Back in the 1970s, 1980s, that was like 72, 73. People are living longer. So there's more people are living longer. There's a bigger demand for where people are going to live. It's as simple as that. And the other thing that you need to consider as well is average earnings in the UK. So average earnings are going up. The average wage in the UK at the moment is just about hitting the 30 grand a year mark. Average in the UK, average 30 grand a year. And if you're going out there doing a skilled profession, a skilled trade, I would say you need to be earning at least the average wage, if not significantly more than the average wage, because this is, it's hard work. You've got to have a lot of tools. You've got to be trying to balance running a business with actually doing the work, potentially running a workshop, running a vehicle. Typical joinery business, you're going to have probably 20 grand's worth of tools and a vehicle. If you work out the depreciation on that, let's say 20 grand's worth of tools and a 30 grand vehicle. So there's 50 grand, and let's assume you're going to have to replace that 50 grand's worth of stuff every 5 years. So there's 10 grand depreciation per year. So that's 10 grand extra money that you need to make just to keep your tools and vehicle running, never mind premises and stuff like that. I'll include links in the description to all this stuff that I'm looking at, but this is just on the government national statistics employee earnings in the UK 2018. But this actually shows you for trades type people, and it's a breakout by occupation. And if you look at skilled trades, it's this little pink area here, and we're kind of sitting in the 20 to 30 grand average wage mark. So this is your average gross wage. That's not your turnover of what your business is going to make. So it's kind of your pre-tax profit equivalent, because this is after you've taken off all your running costs of your business. Let's say you've got 20 grand a year of running costs. So to get to 30 grand a year gross take-home pay, you need to be turning over at least 50 grand a year. Not to mention materials and all that sort of thing. So, okay, so skilled trades, it's in this pink area here. In my view, this whole pink area should be moving way up the graph. I mean, we're in the same remit as secretarial work, leisure services, customer service, call centre work. That's what this current trades, you need to push it up a bit, but it should be in the 30 to 40k at least. Look at what people are charging over in the States. $750 a day, $500 to $750 a day. Joiners and tradespeople, a lot more in a lot of situations. Remember, we're not talking about being employed by a company here. We're not talking about being a contractor or a subcontractor. So forget everything you know about charging customers if you're basing it on how much you got paid as an employee or as a contractor. We're talking about entirely independent work where you have to win the business. You have to deal with the end customer. You need to do all the work. You need to run the business. And you may view this as either a positive or a negative, but if things go well for your business and things go according to plan, and I hate to break it to you, but you're probably not going to be doing the work anymore. If you're going to be employing staff, you're going to be spending more time running the business and managing the staff than you are doing the actual work. Don't go for the bottom rung of the ladder. Aim high, do a good job. There's loads of work out there. You know, okay, there's pockets where there's no money. You're always going to have areas of the country that are poorer than other areas, but those areas are never going to get any richer if you never branch out into the richer areas that do have the money. Do you know what I mean? So if you live in one of those poorer areas, do good work out in some of the richer areas, and then you're doing your bit to bring the poorer areas up in line with the richer areas. I'm generalizing a lot here, but my point is that skilled trades should be up here in this blue area with professional work. Aim higher than that. So I would say if you're going to set up a handyman business, let me just get to the number, but please bear in mind there's so many factors that affect this. It's not as straightforward as me just saying you should charge X. But if you're setting up a handyman business in 2019, I would say you need to be charging at least £30 an hour. At least. And then that's going to depend around the sort of work you're doing, what sort of running costs you've got, whether or not you're doing mostly hourly work or whether you're breaking out into doing, you know, projects that maybe last 2 or 3 weeks. And in which case, it's one of those things that until you've done it and worked at a certain rate for a couple of years and you've worked out all your accounts and you've seen what your actual take-home profit is, it's difficult to judge whether or not your pricing is in the right ballpark. But the key thing is, don't let the customer dictate how much you're going to charge, especially if you don't think it's enough to make a decent living from. If you subscribe to my new Small Business Toolbox channel, I'll include a link in the description below. I'm going to be chatting about how I got to the £30 an hour figure, and I'm going to be chatting about hourly rates and day rates in a lot more detail over on that channel. I'm going to be going into a few different types of businesses and working out potentially maybe what you should be charging and what your take-home wage will actually be. So get yourself subscribed to that channel. There should be a link somewhere. Just to go off on a slight tangent, but I feel the need to rant about this. Do you ever go onto Mumsnet or some of your discussion forums where you've got people saying how much do joiners charge and how much do handymen charge and how much do decorators charge? Well, let me just read out a very typical post off there. And the trouble, these sort of posts wind me up because they're putting out information that kind of sets a precedent for how much people should be charging. Because people look at this and then think, oh, well, that's how much that carpenter charges, or that's how much that handyman charges. That must be how much everyone should charge. And it's a load of rubbish. This person here, title of the post, carpenters quote too much. Handyman? So in other words, the carpenters put in a reasonable price, but it's still not as cheap as they want it to be, so let's find someone who will undercut them. Just received a quote from a carpenter for the following. Hang an oak bifold door, hang 2 softwood doors, cut a worktop to size and fit it. It's new walls, so it should be square, because we all know about these magical new walls that are always perfectly square. Put up 5 simple shelves. What it doesn't tell you there is that they have to make the shelves and probably paint them as well, they haven't said, but put up 5 simple shelves inside a pantry. New walls again, so hopefully square. Total £590. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. That seems a really reasonable price for all of that. I am not willing and cannot afford to pay this. A handyman I had come to fit a radiator cover the other week only charges £100 a day, so I was wondering if he might be a second option for this work. The shelves are pretty simple. We have a similar setup in our bathroom cabinet. Wooden battens on the sides, on walls, and shelving boards placed on top. Is it me, or is this pretty simple? If it's that simple, do it yourself. We're in a rural area where jobs are scarce. I only earn £6.50 an hour. So let me just interject there for a second. I know this is 6 years old or thereabouts, but it's still going to be in the ballpark. If you've had a handyman out charging £100 a day, I will bet my bottom dollar that they're not in business anymore. £100 a day for the best will in the world. They're going to be lucky if they're bringing in 15 grand a year, which is half of the national average wage. The £140 a day that the carpenter wants to charge seems pretty cheap to me, never mind wanting to undercut that. But the thing that gets me is that this person can afford oak bifold doors and all the other work that they're doing in this property, which all sounds fairly swanky. So if you can't afford to fit all this stuff that you've bought, don't take it out on the joiner or the handyman. Get stuffed. There are people out there who will absolutely take advantage of you. Don't let that happen. Move on to your next good customer who's happy to pay a fair rate for the work that needs to be done. They don't understand how much it costs to run a business. And don't come back saying, oh, I could never get away charging that where I live. Bollocks. Go out there, and if you can't, branch out into the areas where you can. It's got to be worthwhile an extra 30 minutes travel time to do half the amount of work but at double the price. What would you rather do? 100 jobs at £20 an hour or 50 jobs at £40 an hour? Because I know what I'd rather do. Handyman work is or property maintenance and handyman work is a great way of breaking into the trades and maybe specialising in key areas, and then you can get qualified in areas that you want to really study in, although that's another whole kettle of fish. Do your own homework in that area as to whether or not it's worth getting qualified, because your customers don't care if you've got a particular qualification or not. If you need it for obviously gas safe stuff and electrical sign off, all that sort of stuff, absolutely you've got to get qualified to do the sign-offs and things. But there's plenty trades that you can do that require no qualification. You just need to do a good job. My other final tip for you, and this is such an important point that so many trades seem to forget to take into account. As you get older, your body starts falling to bits. You're not going to be working at the same pace in your 50s and 60s as you were when you were working in your 20s and 30s. I'm in my 40s and I'm already getting aches and pains in places I didn't even know existed. And if you're in your 20s, I hate to break it to you, but there's a reasonable chance that you're going to be working well into your 70s. So you're going to have to come up with a plan to cater for the fact that as you get older, you're going to slow down. Join me in part 2 on Saturday, and I'll tell you 6 or 7 areas that you could work in now where there's loads of demand for work, no shortage of work at all, and the best bit is they require no special qualifications.